They celebrated my birthday without me. I saw the cake with "Thank you, Grandpa, for everything" written in blue frosting on my daughter Sarah's Instagram. 23 people around the table, my children, grandchildren, their friends. Everyone laughing, raising glasses, taking selfies. I wasn't there. I found out about my own birthday party the same way strangers do, scrolling through social media at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of cold coffee and yesterday's newspaper. The caption under the photo read, "Celebrating Dad's 68th. He would have loved this, but we didn't want to tire him out. Sometimes the best gift is letting our elders rest." Our elders. As if I'd already died. I stared at that photo for 20 minutes. There was my favorite chair, the leather recliner I'd bought 30 years ago when Sarah was born. Someone else was sitting in it. There was my dining table, the oak, one I'd built with my own hands when we moved to the suburbs. It was covered with dishes I'd never seen before, wine I'd never tasted. My grandson, Jake, now 15, was wearing the watch I'd given him last Christmas, the expensive one I'd saved up for 3 months to buy. He was showing it off to his girlfriend, probably telling her some story about his cool grandfather who traveled the world. Except his cool grandfather was sitting alone in a studio apartment across town, eating microwaved soup and wondering when exactly he'd become too much trouble to invite to his own birthday. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Hope you had a nice, quiet evening, Dad. We thought about you, thought about me." Past tense. I set the phone down and walked to the window. My reflection stared back. Gray hair, deep lines around tired eyes, shoulders that had carried more than their share but somehow looked smaller now. When had I become this person? When had I become someone my family celebrated without? The apartment felt smaller than usual. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen counter that could barely fit 2 plates. Sarah had found this place for me after the divorce. "It's perfect for you, Dad. Easy to maintain. Everything you need." What she meant was, everything we think you deserve now. I used to live in a 4-bedroom house with a garden I'd tended for 15 years. I used to host Christmas dinners for 30 people. I used to be the person everyone called when they needed advice, money, or just someone to listen. Now, I was the person they protected from the excitement of his own birthday party. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Patterson?" The voice was deep, professional. Robert Patterson? I hadn't heard my full name spoken with that kind of respect in 2 years. "Yes." "This is David Chen from the Meridian Foundation. I know it's late, but I wanted to call personally. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. Your reservation at the Meridian Club is confirmed for tomorrow evening at 7. The car will pick you up at 6:30. I sat down slowly. Meridian Club. I knew that name. "I think you have the wrong number." "No, sir. Table 12, as always. The board members are looking forward to seeing you again, Mr. Patterson." The line went quiet, except for my breathing. "Mr. Patterson? Are you there?" I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear my old life calling. "Yes," I said. "I'm here." I stared at that phone for 15 minutes after David Chen hung up. The name Meridian Club kept echoing in my head like a song I couldn't quite remember the words to. I walked to my bedroom closet and pushed aside the cardigan sweaters and comfortable pants Sarah had bought me for retirement living. In the back, wrapped in dry cleaner plastic, hung my navy blue suit, the one I'd worn to board meetings, charity galas, and speeches at university graduations, the one I hadn't touched in 2 years. I pulled it out and laid it on the bed. Still fit perfectly, still looked like it belonged to someone important, someone who mattered. But how could they still have my reservation? I'd been out of that world for so long. After Margaret died, after I'd stepped away from everything to be closer to the kids, to be the grandfather I thought they needed. "You should slow down, Dad," Sarah had said when I'd mentioned selling the business. "Enjoy your golden years. Let someone else carry the burden." Burden. That's what my life's work had become to them. A burden to shed. My phone buzzed with another text from Sarah. "Dad, we're having brunch tomorrow at 11. Kids want to see you. Can you make it?" I looked at the message timestamp. 11:47 p.m. An afterthought. A consolation prize. The next morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, holding an electric razor Sarah had given me last Father's Day. Much easier than those old-fashioned razors, Dad. Safer for you. Safer. Everything they gave me now was about safety, convenience, making my life smaller and more manageable. I put the electric razor back in its box and reached for my old straight razor, the one my father had taught me to use when I was 16. My hand was steadier than it had been in months. At 10:30, I called Sarah. "Dad, you're early? Are you on your way to brunch?" "I can't make it today." "What?" "But the kids are expecting you. Jamie made you a card." Something came up. "Dad, what could possibly come up? You're retired. Your schedule is completely open." Your schedule is completely open, as if having nothing to do was the same as being free. "I have dinner plans." Sarah laughed. Actually laughed. "Dinner plans? Dad, with who? Mrs. Henderson from down the hall? An old friend. Well, can't you reschedule? Family comes first?" Family comes first. I'd believed that for 2 years. I'd arranged my entire life around their convenience, their comfort, their idea of what my golden years should look like. Not this time. There was a long pause. "Dad, are you feeling all right? You sound different." "I feel fine, Sarah. Better than I have in a long time." "Okay, well, I guess we'll see you next weekend then. Same time? Same time. Same routine. Same small apartment, same careful conversations, same gentle condescension wrapped in concern. We'll see." I hung up and sat in my kitchen, looking out the window at the parking lot below. A black sedan was pulling up to the building entrance. 6:15 p.m. 15 minutes early. I put on my navy suit, the silk tie Margaret had bought me for our 25th anniversary, and the cufflinks my father had given me when I graduated college. I looked in the mirror one more time. The man staring back wasn't the tired grandfather who lived in apartment 4B. He was someone I used to know very well. Someone I'd almost forgotten existed. The driver was professional, silent. Black Lincoln Town car with tinted windows, the kind of vehicle I hadn't been in since I'd stepped away from the foundation 2 years ago. He held the door open, called me Mr. Patterson, and didn't try to make small talk. As we drove through downtown, I watched familiar buildings pass by. The office complex where I used to spend 12 hours a day. The university where I'd given commencement speeches. The hospital wing that still bore my name on a bronze plaque near the entrance. Robert Patterson Memorial Wing, except I wasn't dead. I was just forgotten. My phone buzzed. Sarah again. Dad, I'm worried about you. You missed brunch. You're not answering my calls. Please text me back so I know you're okay. I turned the phone face down and watched the city lights blur past the window. The Meridian Club occupied the top 3 floors of the Hartwell building. I'd been there dozens of times, back when I sat on boards, back when people sought my opinion on matters that affected thousands of lives. The elevator operator, a different man than I remembered, but wearing the same burgundy uniform, smiled with genuine recognition. Mr. Patterson, good to see you again, sir. Top floor. The doors opened to reveal the oak-paneled reception area I'd helped design 15 years ago. Crystal chandeliers, leather furniture that cost more than most people's cars, and walls lined with portraits of Foundation members who'd changed the world. My portrait was still there, third from the left, between Senator Morrison and Dr. Elizabeth Hayes. The plaque underneath read, Robert Patterson, 1998 to 2023, founder, Patterson Educational Initiative, 47 schools built, 12,000 children served. They thought I was done. Robert, David Chen approached with his hand extended, mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of confidence that comes from managing $100 million budgets. Behind him were faces I recognized. Dr. Martinez from the Children's Hospital Board, Jennifer Walsh from the Literacy Program, Marcus Thompson, who'd taken over my scholarship fund. We weren't sure you'd come, David said. It's been, 18 months? 2 years, I corrected. Right. Well, you look... He paused, searching for the diplomatic word. Rested. Another word for irrelevant. We moved to the private dining room. Table 12, just as David had said, the same table where I'd once sat with governors and university presidents, where we'd planned initiatives that had changed laws, built schools, saved lives. Now I was the guest of honor at what felt like my own wake. Robert, Dr. Martinez began, we've missed your perspective. The foundation isn't the same without your vision. I looked around the table. These people had been my colleagues, my friends. We'd worked 18-hour days together, traveled to disaster zones, stood in classrooms full of kids who wouldn't have had a chance without our work. You replaced me easily enough, I said. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Jennifer Walsh leaned forward. We didn't replace you, Robert. We're managing your programs. There's a difference. The Patterson Initiative has helped 3,000 more children since you stepped away, Marcus added. Your work is still changing lives. I felt something stir in my chest, something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Why did you call me here? I asked. David exchanged glances with the others. We have a proposal, a new project, something that needs your particular expertise. He slid a folder across the table. The Patterson Chen Youth Development Center, a partnership between the foundation and the city. $15 million in funding, 500 at-risk kids, job training, education, mentorship. I opened the folder. Architectural plans, budget projections, impact studies, everything I used to live for. You want my endorsement? We want your leadership, Doctor, Martinez said. Full operational control. Your project, your rules. I stared at the plans. A building, a purpose, a reason to matter again. My family thinks I'm too old for this kind of responsibility." "Your family," Jennifer said carefully, "doesn't understand what you're capable of." I closed the folder and looked around the table. "How long have you been planning this?" "6 months," David admitted. "We've been calling you every week. Your daughter always said you were too busy with family commitments." Sarah, protecting me from my own life, again. "She told you I was too busy?" "She said you'd specifically asked not to be contacted about foundation business, that you wanted to focus on being a grandfather." I felt the last piece of the puzzle click into place. My family hadn't just forgotten me. They'd actively erased me. I picked up the folder and stood. "I'll need 48 hours to consider this." "Of course. Take all the time you need." As I walked toward the elevator, Marcus called after me. "Robert, the car will wait for you, whatever you decide." I turned back to look at him. "Whatever I decide?" "Whether you take the project or not, you're not going back to that apartment tonight. That's not where you belong." The elevator doors closed, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt like Robert Patterson again. Not Dad, not Grandpa, not the old man who needed to be protected from his own life. Just Robert Patterson, the man who'd built schools and changed laws and mattered, the man who still had work to do. The car took me to the Fairmont Hotel, not back to my apartment. David had arranged a suite on the 18th floor, the kind of room I used to book for out-of-town donors and board members. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a sitting area larger than my current living room, and a bottle of Macallan 25 waiting on the mahogany bar cart. I poured 2 fingers and stood at the window, watching traffic move like blood cells through the arteries of a city I'd helped shape. Somewhere down there, in schools I'd funded, kids were doing homework at desks I'd paid for. In hospitals I'd supported, doctors were saving lives with equipment my donations had purchased. But my own family thought I was too fragile to handle a dinner invitation. My phone had been buzzing constantly for the past hour. 7 missed calls from Sarah, 3 from my son Michael, even 1 from my ex-wife Linda. Finally, I answered. "Dad, where the hell are you?" Sarah's voice was sharp with panic. "Mrs. Henderson said she saw you leave in a black car hours ago. You're not answering your phone. We're about to call the police." "I'm fine, Sarah." "Fine? Dad, you disappeared without telling anyone. We had no idea where you were." I sat down in the leather armchair and took another sip of whiskey. "When was the last time I told you where I was going and you actually cared?" "What kind of question is that? Of course we care." "Do you?" "Because 6 months ago, when I mentioned I might volunteer at the Literacy Center, you said I should focus on taking care of myself. When I wanted to tutor kids in math, you said it would be too much stress for my heart. When I suggested joining the Senior Center's community outreach program, you bought me a Netflix subscription instead." Silence on the other end. "Dad, we were trying to protect you." "From what? From having a purpose? From feeling useful? From overexerting yourself? From taking on responsibilities you can't handle anymore?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sarah, do you know what I did before I retired?" You worked for some nonprofit. Education stuff." "Some nonprofit. Education stuff." "I founded the Patterson Educational Initiative. I built 47 schools in underserved communities. I created scholarship programs that sent 12,000 kids to college. I sat on the boards of 6 major charities and personally oversaw the allocation of over $200 million in aid. Another silence, longer this time. I testified before Congress twice. I advised 3 governors on education policy. The children's wing at St. Mary's Hospital exists because I wrote a check for $18 million and spent 2 years managing the construction project myself. Dad, I didn't know all that. You didn't know because you never asked. You decided I was a tired old man who needed protecting, and you never bothered to find out who you were protecting me from becoming. I could hear her crying on the other end of the line. The Patterson-Chin Youth Development Center is being announced next week, I continued. $15 million, 500 at-risk teenagers, job training, college prep, mentorship programs. They want me to run it. They want you to run what? A program that will change 500 lives, maybe save a few of them. The kind of work I've been doing for 30 years, while you've been buying me puzzles and large print books and assuming I was ready for the pasture. Dad, I'm coming to get you. Where are you? I'm exactly where I belong, Sarah, for the first time in 2 years. I hung up and turned off my phone. At 9 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I opened it expecting room service, but found a woman in her 30s with tired eyes and work-worn hands. She was holding a manila envelope and a small girl's hand. Mr. Patterson, I'm Maria Santos. This is my daughter, Elena. I looked down at the little girl, 7, maybe 8 years old, with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. Elena wanted to meet you, Maria said, to say thank you. Thank you for what? Maria's eyes filled with tears. For the scholarship? Elena's in the gifted program at Roosevelt Elementary now, the one your foundation funds. She's reading at a 5th grade level, and she's only in 2nd grade. The little girl stepped forward and handed me a drawing, a crayon picture of a man in a suit standing in front of a school, surrounded by children holding books. At the bottom, in careful block letters, "Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for my school." We heard you might be coming back to work, Maria said. Elena wanted to make sure you knew that what you do matters, that there are kids who wouldn't have a chance without you. I knelt down to Elena's level. What do you want to be when you grow up? A teacher, she said without hesitation, like you. I looked up at Maria. How did you know I was here? Mr. Chen called. He said you were deciding whether to take on a new project and that maybe you'd forgotten why your work was important. He asked if Elena could remind you. I stood up slowly, feeling something fundamental shift inside my chest. Elena, do you know what the Patterson-Chin Youth Development Center is going to be? She shook her head. It's going to be a place where kids like you can go after school and on weekends to learn computers and science and how to apply to college, to meet other kids who love to read and learn. Would you like that? Her face lit up like Christmas morning. Can I really go there? You'll be one of the first students, I said, if I decide to do it. Maria squeezed my hand. Please decide to do it, Mr. Patterson. There are so many kids who need what only you can give them. After they left, I sat in the armchair and stared at Elena's drawing. A man in a suit, standing in front of a school surrounded by children. That man looked nothing like the tired grandfather my family saw when they looked at me. But he looked exactly like the man I used to be, the man I could be again, the man I was going to be. I reached for my phone and called David Chen. "Robert, how are you feeling about the proposal?" "I'll take it," I said. "Full operational control, just like you promised." "That's wonderful news. When can you start?" I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights, at the thousands of lives moving through the darkness below. I already have. The next morning, I woke up in a real bed for the first time in 2 years. Not the narrow twin bed Sarah had picked out for my easier maintenance apartment, but a king-size bed with Egyptian cotton sheets and a view of the sunrise over the city I'd helped build. I ordered room service, real coffee, not the instant stuff I'd been drinking, eggs Benedict instead of microwaved oatmeal, and spread the Patterson-Chen project files across the mahogany table. Budget projections, architectural plans, staffing requirements, the familiar rhythm of building something from nothing. My phone showed 37 missed calls. Sarah, Michael, Linda, even my grandson, Jake. I turned it off and got to work. By noon, I had preliminary staffing plans drafted, 3 potential construction contractors identified, and a meeting scheduled with the City Planning Commission for Thursday. This was what I did. This was who I was. Not the confused old man they'd been managing for 2 years, but the person who turned ideas into realities that changed lives. The knock on my door at 1 p.m. wasn't room service. It was Sarah, Michael, and Linda all looking like they were attending a funeral, my funeral. "We need to talk, Dad," Sarah said, but I didn't move from behind the table where I was working. "I'm busy, Sarah." "Busy with what?" "Dad, you disappeared yesterday. No one knew where you were. We were terrified." I looked up from the budget spreadsheet I was reviewing. "When was the last time you were terrified that I might be living my life without your permission?" Linda pushed past Sarah into the suite. "Jesus, Robert, this place costs more per night than most people make in a month." "I can afford it," I said quietly. Michael was studying the project files spread across the table. His expression shifted from concern to something closer, to shock. "What is all this?" "Work," I said. "Remember work? The thing people do when they want to contribute something meaningful to the world?" Sarah sat down heavily on the couch. She looked exhausted, like she'd been crying all night. "Dad, we're worried about you. This isn't normal behavior. Disappearing, staying in expensive hotels, making major decisions without consulting your family." "Consulting my family?" I set down my pen and really looked at her. "Sarah, when was the last time you consulted me about anything? When you moved me out of my house? When you chose my apartment? When you decided I was too fragile to attend my own birthday party?" "That's different." "How?" Linda stepped forward, using that voice she'd always used when she thought I was being unreasonable. "Robert, be realistic. You're 68 years old. You can't just jump back into this kind of high-stress work. You'll have a heart attack." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Linda, I've been having stress tests every 6 months for 3 years. My cardiologist says I have the heart of a 50-year-old. My blood pressure is perfect, my cholesterol is excellent, and my mind is sharper than it's been since before Margaret died. But the stress of what? Of having a purpose? Of feeling like my life matters? Linda, the most stressful thing I've done in 2 years was sitting in that apartment, eating soup from a can, wondering if anyone would notice if I just stopped existing. Michael picked up one of the budget sheets, scanning the numbers. $15 million? Dad, this is insane. What if you make a mistake? What if you can't handle the responsibility? Then 500 kids don't get the chance to change their lives, I said. But I won't make a mistake, Michael. I've done this before, successfully, for 30 years. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. People hurrying to jobs that mattered to them, carrying briefcases full of projects that would make a difference. Do you know what the Patterson Educational Initiative accomplished? I asked without turning around. 47 schools built in underserved communities. 12,000 kids who went to college on scholarships I created. Hundreds of teachers trained, thousands of families lifted out of poverty. Dad, we know you did important work. Do you? I turned back to face them. Because for 2 years, you've treated me like that work never happened. Like I'm just a tired old man who needs to be managed and protected. Sarah was crying again, but trying to hide it. We just got you back, Dad. After Mom died, after the divorce, we thought we'd lost you completely. Then you moved into the apartment, started coming to family dinners, became the grandfather we always wanted. Now you're going to disappear into this work again? I sat down across from her. Sarah, the grandfather you wanted was a broken man with nothing left to live for except other people's schedules. Is that really what you wanted for me? We wanted you safe. Safe from what? From purpose? From making a difference? From feeling like my life still matters? Your life matters to us. Does it? Because for 2 years, you've treated me like I'm already dead, like I'm just waiting around to die quietly and conveniently. The room went silent, except for the sound of traffic 18 floors below. Michael sat down beside his sister. Dad, that's not fair. Isn't it, Michael? Do you know what I was doing the night of my birthday party while you were all celebrating without me? I was sitting in a dark apartment, wondering if anyone would notice if I just stopped existing. Dad. And then David Chen called, and for the first time in 2 years, someone spoke to me like I was a person instead of a problem to be managed. I picked up Elena's drawing from the table and showed it to them. A 7-year-old girl drew this for me yesterday. Elena Santos. She's reading at a 5th grade level because of a program I created. She wants to be a teacher when she grows up. She knows my name and what I do because it matters to her future. Sarah looked at the crayon drawing, then back at me. Who is she? She's one of 12,000 kids whose lives I've changed. She came to thank me, Sarah, to make sure I knew that what I do matters, that there are children in this city who wouldn't have a chance without the work I've been doing for 30 years. I stood up and walked back to the table where the project files were spread out. Tomorrow morning, I'm announcing the Patterson Chen Youth Development Center, $15 million, 500 at-risk teenagers, job training, and college preparation. By Christmas, we'll break ground. By next summer, kids like Elena will have a place to go after school where someone believes in them. What about family dinners? Sarah asked quietly. What about the grandkids? What about them, Sarah? I spent 2 years rearranging my entire life around your convenience. I ate dinner at 4:30 p.m. because that worked better for the kids' schedules. I watched cartoons instead of the news because Jake thought the news was boring. I pretended to enjoy checkers instead of chess because chess was too complicated for family game night. I walked to the closet and pulled out my Navy suit. Jake can't remember the last book he read, but Elena reads for 2 hours every night because she knows education is the key to her future. Jake asks me for money for video games. Elena asks her mother if she can really go to college someday. That's not a fair comparison, Michael said. Isn't it? Michael, when was the last time Jake asked me about anything other than money or rides to the mall? When was the last time any of your kids showed genuine interest in who I am or what I've accomplished? They love you, Dad. They love the idea of having a grandfather who gives them presents and doesn't ask them to think about anything challenging. They don't actually know me at all. Linda stood up, gathering her purse. Robert, if you're determined to do this, fine, but don't expect us to pretend we're not worried. I'm not asking you to pretend anything, Linda. I'm informing you that I'm taking control of my own life again. Sarah wiped her eyes. What does that mean for us? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. 42 years old, successful lawyer, mother of 2. When had she become someone who thought love meant making people smaller? It means I'm taking this job. It means I'm moving back into the world where I belong. It means I'm going to matter again, whether you think I'm capable of it or not. And if we can't accept that, then you'll miss out on watching your father build something incredible, something that will outlast all of us. I walked toward the bedroom, then turned back. There's going to be a press conference tomorrow at 10 a.m. City Hall, main conference room. If you want to understand who your father really is, I suggest you attend. And if we don't, then you'll read about it in the newspaper like everyone else. I closed the bedroom door behind me and began getting dressed for dinner. Outside, I could hear them talking in hushed, worried voices. They were discussing me like I was a problem to be solved, an issue to be managed. But I wasn't their problem anymore. I was Robert Patterson again, and Robert Patterson had work to do. As I knotted my tie in the mirror, the same silk tie Margaret had bought me for our 25th anniversary, I realized something fundamental had changed. For 2 years, I'd been asking for their permission to exist. Now, I was simply informing them that I did. My phone buzzed. A text from David Chen. Press conference confirmed for tomorrow. Are you ready to change the world again? I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Gray hair, yes. Lines around my eyes, certainly. But the man looking back at me wasn't tired anymore. He wasn't defeated. He was someone who built schools and changed lives and mattered. I texted back, I've been ready for 2 years. I just forgot. When I came out of the bedroom, they were gone. But Elena's drawing was still on the table, and tomorrow there would be 500 more kids just like her who needed someone to believe in them. Someone who remembered that age wasn't about counting years. It was about counting the lives you still had time to change. It felt like coming back from the dead. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at City Hall. I arrived at 9:15, wearing my Navy suit and carrying a leather briefcase I hadn't touched in 2 years. The same briefcase that had traveled with me to meetings with senators, university presidents, and foreign dignitaries. The main conference room was packed. Local news stations, education reporters, city council members, and representatives from every major charity in the state. David Chen had done his work well. This wasn't just an announcement, it was a statement. At 9:45, I saw them slip in through the back doors, Sarah, Michael, and Linda trying to be inconspicuous. They sat in the last row, Sarah clutching a tissue, Michael checking his phone nervously, Linda wearing the skeptical expression she'd perfected during our marriage. But they were there. At exactly 10 a.m., Mayor Rodriguez introduced me as a visionary leader who transformed education in our city and is now returning to transform even more lives. I walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd of faces, some familiar, some new, all waiting to hear what Robert Patterson had to say. 2 years ago, I began, I made what I thought was the right decision. I stepped away from the work I loved to become the grandfather my family needed. I traded boardrooms for family dinners, budget meetings for bedtime stories, strategic planning for grocery shopping. A few chuckles from the audience. In the back row, Sarah was crying again. I thought that's what it meant to age gracefully, to step aside, to let younger people take over, to make myself smaller so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone. I paused, looking directly at my family. I was wrong. The room was completely silent now. Last week, a 7-year-old girl named Elena Santos came to my hotel room. She brought me a drawing, a picture of a man in a suit standing in front of a school surrounded by children. At the bottom, she'd written, "Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for my school." I held up the drawing, and the cameras flashed. Elena reads at a 5th grade level. She wants to be a teacher when she grows up. She knows my name not because I'm someone's grandfather, but because I'm someone who built something that changed her life. I set the drawing down and looked back at the audience. The Patterson Chen Youth Development Center will serve 500 at-risk teenagers. We'll provide job training, college preparation, mentorship programs, and most importantly, hope. Hope that their circumstances don't define their futures. The formal announcement took 20 minutes. Budget details, construction timeline, staffing plans. The kind of presentation I'd given hundreds of times before, but hadn't given in 2 years. My voice was steady, my mind sharp, my purpose clear. When I finished, the questions began. "Mr. Patterson, you've been out of the education field for 2 years. Are you concerned about returning to such a demanding role at 68? "I'm not returning to anything," I said. "I never stopped being an educator. I just forgot for a while." "What made you decide to take on this project?" I looked toward the back of the room where my family sat. I realized that the greatest gift I can give my grandchildren isn't my constant presence. It's the example of a man who never stops fighting for something bigger than himself. Sarah was sobbing now, not even trying to hide it. "Mr. Patterson, critics might say this is too ambitious for someone your age. How do you respond?" I'd say that age is just a number, but purpose is everything. I've built 47 schools, sent 12,000 kids to college, and changed hundreds of thousands of lives. I'm not too old to change 500 more. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at City Hall. I arrived at 9:15, wearing my Navy suit and carrying a leather briefcase I hadn't touched in 2 years. The same briefcase that had traveled with me to meetings with senators, university presidents, and foreign dignitaries. The main conference room was packed. Local news stations, education reporters, city council members, and representatives from every major charity in the state. David Chen had done his work well. This wasn't just an announcement. It was a statement. At 9:45, I saw them slip in through the back doors. Sarah, Michael, and Linda trying to be inconspicuous. They sat in the last row, Sarah clutching a tissue, Michael checking his phone nervously, Linda wearing the skeptical expression she'd perfected during our marriage. But they were there. At exactly 10 a.m., Mayor Rodriguez introduced me as a visionary leader who transformed education in our city and is now returning to transform even more lives. I walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd of faces, some familiar, some new, all waiting to hear what Robert Patterson had to say. 2 years ago, I began, I made what I thought was the right decision. I stepped away from the work I loved to become the grandfather my family needed. I traded boardrooms for family dinners, budget meetings for bedtime stories, strategic planning for grocery shopping. A few chuckles from the audience. In the back row, Sarah was crying again. I thought that's what it meant to age gracefully, to step aside, to let younger people take over, to make myself smaller so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone. I paused, looking directly at my family. I was wrong. The room was completely silent now. Last week, a 7-year-old girl named Elena Santos came to my hotel room. She brought me a drawing, a picture of a man in a suit standing in front of a school surrounded by children. At the bottom, she'd written, "Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for my school." I held up the drawing, and the cameras flashed. Elena reads at a 5th grade level. She wants to be a teacher when she grows up. She knows my name not because I'm someone's grandfather, but because I'm someone who built something that changed her life. I set the drawing down and looked back at the audience. The Patterson Chen Youth Development Center will serve 500 at-risk teenagers. We'll provide job training, college preparation, mentorship programs, and most importantly, hope. Hope that their circumstances don't define their futures. The formal announcement took 20 minutes. Budget details, construction timeline, staffing plans, the kind of presentation I'd given hundreds of times before but hadn't given in 2 years. My voice was steady, my mind sharp, my purpose clear. When I finished, the questions began. "Mr. Patterson, you've been out of the education field for 2 years. Are you concerned about returning to such a demanding role at 68? "I'm not returning to anything," I said. "I never stopped being an educator. I just forgot for a while." "What made you decide to take on this project?" I looked toward the back of the room where my family sat. I realized that the greatest gift I can give my grandchildren isn't my constant presence. It's the example of a man who never stops fighting for something bigger than himself. Sarah was sobbing now, not even trying to hide it. "Mr. Patterson, critics might say this is too ambitious for someone your age. How do you respond?" "I'd say that age is just a number, but purpose is everything. I've built 47 schools, sent 12,000 kids to college, and changed hundreds of thousands of lives. I'm not too old to change 500 more." The press conference ended with thunderous applause. As I shook hands with city officials and reporters, I saw my family making their way through the crowd toward me. Sarah reached me first, throwing her arms around me in a way she hadn't done since she was a child. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "We didn't know. We didn't understand." "I know you didn't," I said, holding her tight. "But now you do." Michael appeared beside us, his expression a mixture of pride and embarrassment. "Dad, that was incredible. I had no idea you'd accomplished so much." "You never asked," I said gently. "But it's not too late to start asking now." Even Linda approached, her usual criticism replaced by something that might have been admiration. "Robert, I'm proud of you. This is who you're supposed to be." Over the next hour, as reporters interviewed me and photographers took pictures, my family stayed close, not managing me or protecting me, but simply witnessing who their father and grandfather actually was. At noon, as the crowd dispersed, Elena Santos appeared with her mother. She was wearing her best dress and carrying a new drawing, this one showing the Patterson Chen Youth Development Center with dozens of children streaming through the doors. "Mr. Patterson," she called, running up to me. "I saw you on TV. Mama says you're going to build us a new school." I knelt down to her level, ignoring the photographers who were capturing the moment. "Not a school, Elena. Something even better. A place where kids like you can discover just how amazing they really are." She handed me the new drawing, then surprised me by hugging me tight. "Thank you for not giving up on us." As she and her mother walked away, I felt Sarah's hand on my shoulder. "Is this what you've been missing?" she asked quietly. "This is what I've always done," I said. "It's just who I am." That evening, we had dinner together, not at the usual 4:30 family-friendly time, not in someone's cramped apartment, but at a real restaurant where we could talk like adults. Jake, my 15-year-old grandson, peppered me with questions about the foundation, about the schools I'd built, about the countries I'd visited for educational projects. "Grandpa, why didn't you ever tell us about any of this?" he asked. I looked across the table at this young man who was seeing me clearly for the first time. "Because you never seemed interested in anything that didn't involve video games or money for the mall." He blushed. "I'm interested now." "Good, because I'm going to need volunteers for the youth center. Kids your age who can help mentor the younger ones." His eyes lit up. "Really? You'd want my help." "Jake, I've been waiting 2 years for you to ask how you could help with something that matters." Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. "Dad, can you forgive us for trying to make you smaller, for not seeing who you really were?" I squeezed her hand. "Sarah, you thought you were protecting me. I understand that. But protection and love aren't the same thing. Love means believing in someone's ability to be their best self, even when they're 68 years old." Michael raised his glass. "To Dad, to the Patterson Chen Youth Development Center, and to never underestimating someone just because they're older than we are." We toasted, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I was sitting with my real family, not the people who managed my decline, but the people who could celebrate my comeback. 3 months later, on a crisp October morning, I stood in front of a construction site where the Patterson Chen Youth Development Center was taking shape. Steel beams reached toward the sky. Concrete foundations promised stability. And everywhere I looked, workers were building something that would last long after I was gone. Elena Santos stood beside me, wearing a hard hat that was too big for her head and holding another drawing, this one showing the finished building with hundreds of kids streaming through the doors. "Mr. Patterson," she said, tugging on my sleeve, "when I grow up and become a teacher, will you come visit my classroom?" I knelt down beside her, looking at this remarkable little girl who saw possibilities where others might see obstacles. "Elena, when you become a teacher, I might be too old to visit your classroom. But you know what? You'll carry something with you that I helped build. Every kid you teach, every life you change, every dream you help someone achieve, that's how I'll visit your classroom. Through the work we're doing right now." She smiled, that gap-toothed grin that reminded me why I'd spent 30 years fighting for kids just like her. "That's okay, Mr. Patterson, as long as you don't give up on us." I looked up at the steel beams reaching toward the sky, then back at this child who represented hope itself. "Elena, I'm 68 years old. I've built 47 schools, sent 12,000 kids to college, and changed hundreds of thousands of lives. But you know what? I'm just getting started." She hugged me tight, and I realized that this moment, this purpose, this connection between generations united by hope, this was what family really meant. Not the people who made you smaller because they loved you, but the people who made you bigger because they believed in you. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, those people found their way back to each other. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Dad, Jake wants to volunteer at the center every weekend. He says he wants to be like his grandfather when he grows up." I smiled and typed back, "Tell him he already is." The sun was setting over the city I'd helped build, and somewhere out there, 500 kids were about to get a chance they never would have had, and I was exactly where I belonged. 6 months later, the Patterson-Chin Youth Development Center was nearing completion. I stood in what would soon be the main computer lab, watching workers install the final workstations. Each desk represented a future changed, a dream made possible, a life redirected toward something better. My phone rang. Sarah. "Dad, I just got off the phone with Jake's guidance counselor. He's applying for early admission to State University. Engineering program. He says he wants to build schools like his grandfather." I smiled, looking out the window at the city skyline. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that his grandfather is the most capable man I know, and that Jake learned from the best." It had taken 6 months, but my family had finally stopped seeing me as someone who needed protection and started seeing me as someone worth emulating. "There's something else, Dad." Linda called. She wants to make a donation to the center, a significant one. How significant? $200,000. She says she's finally realized what she walked away from when she left you. I leaned against the window frame, watching traffic move through the streets below. It's not about what she walked away from, Sarah. It's about what she's choosing to walk toward now. That afternoon, I met with the first group of students who would be entering the program. 50 teenagers from across the city, each one carrying stories of struggle, dreams deferred, and potential waiting to be unlocked. Maria Santos was there with Elena, who was now 8 and reading at a 7th grade level. "Mr. Patterson," Elena said, tugging on my sleeve, "I wrote you a story. She handed me 3 pages of carefully written text. The title read, "The Man Who Built Dreams." I read the first paragraph aloud. Once upon a time, there was a man who forgot he was magic. He lived in a small room and ate soup from cans because everyone told him he was too old to change the world. But then he remembered that magic isn't about age, it's about believing in tomorrow. I looked down at this remarkable child who had somehow understood the entire journey I'd taken over the past year. "Elena, this is beautiful. Did you write this yourself?" Mama helped with the spelling, but the words are all mine. "Is it true, Mr. Patterson? Did you really forget you were magic?" I knelt down to her level, surrounded by 50 other kids who were waiting to discover their own magic. "Yes, Elena, for 2 years I forgot. But you know what I learned? Sometimes we need other people to remind us who we really are, and sometimes we need to remind them too." As I stood up, I realized that the past year hadn't just been about building a youth center or reclaiming my career. It had been about understanding that family isn't just the people who share your blood. Family is everyone who believes in your potential, who challenges you to be better, who refuses to let you settle for less than your best self. My biological family had learned to see me as more than just their aging father. But Elena, the kids in this program, the colleagues who had welcomed me back, they had become family too. The kind of family that grew stronger when its members grew stronger instead of smaller. The Patterson-Chen Youth Development Center opened its doors on a Monday morning in March. 500 kids walked through those doors carrying backpacks full of hope and uncertainty. By Friday, they were carrying something more valuable, the knowledge that someone believed in them, and I was exactly where I belonged. Not because someone had made room for me, but because I had made room for myself. At 68, I wasn't winding down. I was just getting started. The magic Elena had written about wasn't gone. It had just been waiting for me to remember that age is just a number, but purpose is everything. And some purposes are too important to retire from.